Okay.
Okay, David.
All
Hello,
right.
how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you, sir.
Love to hear it. Guess we'll get started with question number one, which is a fun one. What have you learned about managing money and handling financials?
Well, that ought to be a good one for you since you're in financial stuff. Frankly, I don't handle it too much, so I don't have to worry about it. Over the years, your granddad and I shared the financial part. When he was able, he was write all of our household checks and things. And after he became unable to do that, I took them over. So the last 10 years, I suppose, I've been doing that. But mostly it's just keeping up with things. I haven't learned anything more than pay your bills and pay them on time. So that's pretty much where my thing sits.
I'll actually ask a follow-up question to that one. With like your philosophy on it, have you been more of a live by your means type of thing, or would you rather spend money that's available to you, the discretionary income on what you like to do? What do you think is more important, saving and preparing for the future, perhaps, or spending it loosely?
I think probably important would be savings. However, it depends on where you are. In our situation, it took everything we had to live. Every paycheck went out as soon as it came in, as long as the kids were little. When they were a little older, we were able to save a little more. And of course, at that time, they also took some out of your salary so that you could save in that way. And my husband had profit sharing, so that was saved that we didn't even know it was there, of course. So that type of, we did save in that way. And fortunately, when we started out, when he came home from service, he had already been sending money home to his mom and dad, so to save for him, and we were able to put a down payment on a home. Therefore, we were able to buy our first home and start from there. And each home, of course, that we bought after that had a good down payment to get a better place. So basically, that was kind of what we did. We didn't consciously just save, or take out this or whatever. It just was as much as we could, we did. We had paid our times during when the kids were little, when you take them to the doctor. By the time you'd pay them about $5 a month, but you would pay them and pay it almost off, then they get sick again. So then you got to start all over again. So we had those kind of bills at all times, but we managed to stay above water. Glad to know. So.
Alrighty. And for the next one, how do you stay in such good shape physically?
Well, I think it must be genes because I'll do anything that does anything. I stay active as far as trying to do something every day, trying to get up and do some activity. I used to start the day at about 7:30 and work up till about 3 or 4 o'clock, working outdoors, working inside. Then it got to be 3 o'clock, working outdoors, working inside, and now it's about 12 o'clock. But I do stay some active that way. And then seeing people, of course, and socializing, that's one of the ways that I do.
Alrighty. You've had several pets while the kids were growing up. What do you think about owning and caring for animals?
I think the main thing is all of you probably already know with me, a pet is a pet. A pet isn't a human. And I'm afraid that the way I feel about today's pets, as much as I love animals, they have been treated more like humans than they do like pets. And therefore, they have more privileges sometimes than your kids do. And I think that it's gone a little bit overboard. I do think that they're wonderful things to have. I think particular people alone, like there are different ones of ours that have children, have no children are by themselves. It's a wonderful companion for them, and I think that they certainly are fun to have. They're a lot of trouble, but so are kids. So but I think it's gone a little bit to the extreme on one way that they should be maybe not be elevated totally to the human status, which I think they are today.
Very, very good point. Why do you want to go to the Kentucky Derby or New York City?
Never been.
Never
That's
been.
one of the reasons. I just think going to the Kentucky Derby, it's just so much all of that pageantry and all those big hats. I just think it's lovely. And I would like to go because I've been told you don't want to go up there with a lot of those people. I thought, well, I still would enjoy the pageantry of it. And I like to see the horses and see them run. But as far as New York, I really would love to go some real good plays and some good theater that we don't have available in Lynchburg. And I really have always wanted to go see those kind of things. And I always wanted to see the Rockettes. They are not at this point. I think they might be back in now, but I would really love to go see a performance that they have. So that's my reason for going to New York, not to be in the traffic of New York.
I thought that was going to be it. So. How do you future?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you future and maintain friendships and family relations?
Well, over the years, I think we did maintain. We always had at least three real good close friends when the kids were growing up that did things with all the time. And when we were older, when the kids left home, we had about 6 other couples that we constantly were with and socialized with. Every weekend we went with them somewhere and did something very small things, picnics, visiting homes, that sort of thing. So in maintaining those, of course, by reaching this ripe old age that I am, there's only about one of us left out of the whole 10 or so that used to get together all the time. So I don't do a lot of visiting with them now, but I do try to keep in touch with the ones I do know through phone and see how they're doing. And most of my friends have been through church, and it's been nice to see them occasionally and back again now, going to church some. So that's mainly how keep in contact with them. So.
Alrighty, well that feeds into the next one. Well, what is your faith? And what does it mean to you?
Well, I think it's a major part of my life. I do think that having faith in not just, which I do, in Jesus, and I do think that I am going to heaven because of him. And I think that I believe certainly in God. And I think that he has certainly been there through everything. And I do quite often discuss things with him, and I don't hear the necessarily talking back to me, but I do, which is good, I guess. But I do feel the presence and feel the comfort of that sort of thing. So I do think that faith in that, and of course there's faith in other things as well. I mean, not just in your religious end of it. I think there's having faith in people. I think I have a great faith in people. I think that the faith that people have, sometimes we've lost a lot of trust in people, and I think that's not good in today's world. I think our generation trusted people more. We trusted your word. If you said you were going to do something, we knew you would. If it was just a handshake, you didn't have to have a written word. You didn't have to have a written signature on anything. You trusted people more, and I think that our whole nation was built on more trust than we have today. But I just think that's the way things are with the world today. So basically, that's kind of where I stand on that. But as I can see.
Follow-up to that, or somewhat of a follow-up. You mentioned heaven. What do you expect to see in heaven? What is your vision of what heaven has to offer?
Well, I went to a funeral one time not too long ago for one of our members, and the minister said during the time, he said, well, the one thing about it, this person was killed on a motorcycle accident, but he actually, I think, had a heart attack and died on his motorcycle. But anyway, he said, I know that when he died then, that Christ came down and took his hand and went with him. And I think that's true. I think, number one, you'll see Christ. But I think the fact that I really feel like that you're going to see, that we even told, we'll recognize people from like Abraham all the way back. So I feel like we will recognize our own relatives and friends and things. I expect we'll be surprised at some people that are there. We'll probably be surprised that some of them didn't get there. So, I mean, in fact, I'm sure they'll be surprised to see us come through the door. I don't know. But that's kind of what I expect. I think it's an undescribable place. I don't think,
Right.
I don't know that, at one time I had heard that one religion says there are 7 heavens. And I don't know whether that's true. I just know that I couldn't possibly be in the same 7 heaven that Paul was in. There's no way I could have reached his level. So I feel like that maybe I'd get on the first level anyway.
So, I mean, do you think there's an open field, a great hall, a stadium? I mean, how do you envision that entry? Just yourself, just your own opinion of it.
I think a feeling of peace, probably, and warmth, and just a good feeling that that's
Right.
great. I'm sure that it's got to be beautiful, but I don't think our human eyes can describe what it would be. I don't think we have anything on earth that shows as beautiful as things are here. I don't think we know how to picture what it would actually be.
All right. If you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
I don't really like that
It's
question.
a tough question. It does
is,
make you think.
That's got John written all over
It does. Maybe instead, if you had to give one word, just one word that you think applies to yourself more than any other word, and that can be like a moral or a value or just something that you think is the most important thing to you and who you are.
I would expect loving,
That's a good one.
and I won't go any further.
Hey, it said one word was it's a one word
You said
answer.
one
We have to
word.
draw this out. It has to be 45 minutes as per John. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, this one is a good one. I think you can answer this one well. When you transitioned from mother to grandmother to great grandmother, what was that like? Each transition, what moment sat with you the most throughout that transition?
I would expect grandmother was really exciting because it was the first of everything. And I think that you're always excited for your children to have children, is to see what the kids would look like and everything of that sort. And of course, we were fortunate. Mine was named Sarah Catherine, so she named after both grandmothers, so I was blessed there. But I think that going into each one of the grandchildren, though, that were born, each one of them is special. And I think it's really funny that the same thing's true with children, for that matter, that no matter how many you have, each one of them has their own little special place that they carve a little niche out in your heart, no matter who they are and how many you have. They have their own little special place. And I think the same thing's true with the great-grandchildren. I think it's wonderful to be able to see the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and to see who they look like and how things change over the years. So I've enjoyed all of them, no matter what.
So I'm going to go back to a question that David started with, and I didn't want to follow up to your follow-up, but it's because we were raised this way. I think about this, it came to my mind. And you mentioned the financials that you tried to you tried to balance as best you could. David didn't grow up this way. Most of the rest of our children didn't grow up this way, and the great-grandchildren definitely haven't. You know, we grew up on the 6 acres, and we had our own garden, and we grew a lot of our own food. How much would, as a guesstimation, and it's absolutely going to be a guess, of your grocery bills, how much of it back in the time when we were coming up was in the garden versus, you know, growing your own versus how much you guys had to buy out?
We supplemented, I guess you'd say, but I actually feel like we supplemented from joy of gardening. Your dad loved to garden, and there was certainly nothing in it better than the fresh produce and stuff that came in from the garden. But I don't think that it would have made too much difference if he did not garden as far as grocery shoppings and financial end of it,
Okay.
because it cost you to garden too, as well as to buy groceries. And I think that basically it was more of a love of wanting to work with the garden than it was financially. We put up fruit, of course. We put up green beans, all the veggies and things. So it did save us, yes, in the long run. But I don't know that there was a great deal of. It wasn't put up because it was economical. It was put up because we loved it.
Okay. And I was thinking to that two things. The other night we had a dinner, and the kids were talking about the time that we would have probably about twice a year. We would have the corn for dinner. We would just fix corn and it'd be all over the table. Mm-hmm. And then I think back to the times of Dad's pickling, mm-hmm. The Paw pickles. And, where that kind of falls into, I think, what you already said, which is that predominantly that was a joy event, mm-hmm. And I mean, because obviously it definitely lets you enjoy the food at the time, right. But you're saying it's more joy than anything, probably.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was not, like I said, for to save money. It was what he liked to do. Some people like to hunt. Some people like to fish. Some people like to go on trips. He liked to garden.
Right.
I didn't like to can, but he liked to garden.
All right, you and I talked about this the other day, and we didn't really come up with a proper term, but I'm going to ask it, and then we can kind of bounce around it. And that, I asked you, when did you realize that you and Dad were the family matriarchs? And it's not just, it wasn't the head of household, which is what you guys have been, for, well, how old is Joan? 70 years. So not quite Joan, sorry. But, not the Evers household, but the Singleton Evers household, as well as I think you guys a lot of times were advisors to a lot of your friends as well. So did you, and you kind of, as we talked on the phone, said, I don't think we did that. So you never really realized that you guys were the advisory committee to a lot of external people?
Not really. I think that we had big mouths, I guess, and loose tongues or whatever, and we talked a lot. But I think that advice per se, I don't think was inquired of us. I think that in talking over things that were bugging people or things that came up, we may have offered some advice and different things. But basically, I think it was more or less a friendly exchange of words together with your family and with your friends and with the other members. I think very seldom did we actually counsel anybody more or less in any particular way. So I don't feel like that any more than anybody else would have done. I really don't, that we did anything different.
Well, so that being said, and we talked about this, the fact that it seemed that there's a variety of cousins that are always saying, do you think Aunt Sarah would approve, or cousin Sarah would approve, or cousin Sarah and Earl, for that matter, would approve of that? Why do you think that so many of our cousins have that, hold you to that pedestal?
Well, that's the problem. They may have us on a pedestal that we don't belong on, because I don't think that we do anything differently. I think, fortunately and thankfully, our particular family does seem to do things okay and does seem to get along all right. They seem to have stayed in jobs well. They've made livings well. The families have gotten along. We've been very fortunate with splits in the families and things. They're not perfect by a long shot, but I think that it's an example that some of the family looks at, that they are as proud as we are that has happened. And I think the comments that what we have had have been along those lines, that they are as proud to know that things have gone as well. And we are, I think, quite fortunate that I think, as we mentioned earlier, that what I am as happy about as anything is I thoroughly enjoyed and am so proud of the things that each of you kids have accomplished in your jobs and in your families. But I think the most thing I'm proud of is the fact that you still keep in touch with each other. And then when you do get together, you really seem, I don't know how much is put on, but you do seem to really enjoy each other's and company. And there's not dissension, and there's not fussing, and there's not argument, and there's not things. And I'm afraid I have to put it somewhat on the fact that so often when families get together, there's alcohol involved. And we never had alcohol involved. And it does make people act differently sometimes. So I don't know whether that's part of it. Your father did not drink, your father did not smoke, neither did I. And I don't know whether they were the examples there that come down through the ages that did it. Whatever they do at their own homes, I don't know, but they never did. In our presence, they did not do that. And I am very respectful of that. And I appreciate it.
So, today's world, and not necessarily talking about Russia and Ukraine, but, your opinion today, and this could be on any subject within that pops in your head about your potential thoughts of what's going on today. And you could compare it to last year with the influx of COVID, or are we talking, 20 years ago comparison to 40 years ago comparison? What is just your thoughts of the direction of what's happening in the world today?
Well, I like to think that God's still in control. So even if it's a mess, hopefully that we'll get straightened out with His help. I do see the lack of respect in everything. I think that children do not respect people. They're not taught to respect people. Even school, they're not taught to respect the school authorities. They're not taught to respect. Your father said years ago, somebody asked him if he would serve his country again. And he said, if my commander-in-chief asked me to and said I was needed, I would go if I could. And I think that was a special respect for country, for flag, for politicians. And I just think that we've lost a lot of the respect for people, for even being together. I just think that is one of the worst things that we have lost. And I think the respect for the language nowadays is atrocious. The language that's used in the schools and is used with the kids and with the young adults, and it's in the workplace and everywhere. It used to hear the language like that on the streets in the worst places. Now it's commonplace. And I think it's a lack of respect as much as anything.
And I'm sure you feel this way, but, how would Paul feel? I know he would agree with you with a lot. What else do you think Dad would feel about what today is like? Other than what you just described, what else would Dad think?
I don't know. I think he'd just be appalled at what is going on. I think that I'm not sure that he would care for certainly the morals of the country are not good, and I think he would be astounded at some of the things that do go on in our world today. He was outspoken in some things, but he would have spoken to us about it. Maybe I don't think he would have got on a platform somewhere because he was not that kind of person. But I think that he would have been appalled at what is actually going on.
So you're 92.
Yeah.
What regrets in life do you have? Are there any?
Basically, no. I think I did most everything that I wanted to do. I think that there are always some things that I should have done differently that I feel like in some ways I, as a young mama, was very much, you got to stay clean, you got to look good when you go out, you've got to do this. I was after what impression that you guys made on the world. as you left the house, because it was a reflection on what your dad and I did at home. And so that was one of the reasons. But I think I could have spent less time on that maybe, and more time with just enjoying it more than I did. And I did enjoy it a lot. But I think that that's one of the things. I think as far as accomplishments, I always wanted to play the violin and never did get to do it. So I don't expect I'll learn now. And I certainly couldn't. I even tried the guitar, but because of the arthritis in my fingers, it wouldn't work the thing. So too late for that, I think. But and I always regretted I didn't learn to swim. I dog paddle, but I don't swim. Right. And I think I missed out on a lot of fun and good times because I didn't swim. So basically, if they're regrets, those are the only regrets I have.
Pretty small list. So, so I'm going to change a little bit. So other than Kentucky Derby and New York City, what else is on the bucket list? You don't have regrets of things you didn't necessarily do, but it's okay, let's go outside of that. What else is on the bucket list of, you know what, I really would, violin, I'd never heard that. So what else is on there that you would like to either accomplish or to do or to go see? You know, like the Kentucky Derby kind of thing. Is there an event? Is there a place? Is there a, you mentioned the Rockettes. Is there a show in Las Vegas that's of interest, or the Grand Canyon, or anything else you can think of like that?
I don't know that there was. I've never been a big traveler, and I'm not a real historian. So I mean, going to museums never did turn me on too much. I'm sorry.
Must be where we all got it from. But
I don't care for museums, and I could see the Grand Canyon on television and be just as happy as going out and looking at the Grand Canyon. It's a beautiful place. I think people should go, and if they want, but I never had any desire to go. I even didn't care to travel overseas to see places. I was perfectly content to stay, and I would like to have seen more of the United States, maybe, and other places, just because I didn't. But I don't really know of anything on my bucket list that I've done all I'm going to do. That's just what it amounts to.
Anything that you can think of that you and Dad would have wanted to do together that you didn't get a chance to do?
I don't think so. I think we lived each day together. I think we shared everything we did. I think that everywhere he went, I went, which a lot of people don't even like that, but that worked for us very much. I think that was one of the reasons that when he died, that I felt, gosh, he deserted me. He went somewhere that I couldn't go.
Right.
And he didn't want me to go, and I really didn't want to go.
Right.
But it was a time when we didn't do that together. But we always did everything together, and that was fine. And I don't think that he would have been wanting to do any more togetherness than we did. So just be together. That was the main thing.
That's a good answer. All right, so one more. What great nugget of advice, because this is going to be, in the history books, produced on E! Channel or something. What nugget of advice do you have for the age group of your children, to your grandchildren, to your great-grandchildren? It could be different for each one, or it could apply to all three levels. But what else do you have to offer of little nuggets? And it's not, Jason, go get the basin. It's, what else, can you think of that we want to make sure that we cover in the historical moment of what we're doing?
I don't think I'm wise enough to give her advice in the first place. I do tend to have an opinion at times that sometimes I don't need to give because it's not always wanted, but I do it anyway at times. But and most of the time when I give advice to you kids, you've always been real respectful. You say, yes, ma'am, and go on and do what you're going to do anyway, and that's fine because that's the way it should be. But I don't know. I think that just for the kids coming along, I think be honest, be true to yourself, be good citizens, and believe in God. And that's it. That's all I could really say. So that's pretty much what only thing I would know to tell them, you all are doing a good job with them as it is, so you don't need my advice.
Okay. Think that's it.
Thank you.
Cut.